Luis Robert Jr.'s ceiling was a storyline that we talked about all throughout spring training down at Mets camp. The fact that if this player stays healthy, he could end up being one of the best outfielders in all of baseball this year. And you look back to what he did with the White Sox in 2023. Robert said in spring training that if he's able to stay on the field and play a full season, that he can match that kind of production where he hit almost 40 homers and was one of the best players in the league and an all-star, but he could potentially be even better. And we're seeing that so far. It's only 2 games. Let's not jump to any conclusions just yet. But man, he has had his fingerprints all over these first 2 wins for the Mets here at Citi Field against the Pirates. Had a couple hits, a couple runs batted in on opening day, and a big offensive outburst for the Mets, an 11-7 victory. That was back on Thursday. And then tonight here in Queens, an ugly win for the Mets. Some sloppy defense, a lot of woes with runners in scoring position, including the 10th inning where they had bases loaded, nobody out in a tie game. They needed 1 run to win this ball game. Top of the order coming up, and Lindor, Soto, and Bichette were retired in order, and they didn't get the job done there. But some resilience earlier in that inning with a big pinch hit single from Mark Vientos, game tying single from Luis Torrens, and then in the 11th, it was Robert Jr. that hit the game winning blast to send the fans home happy on a windy and chilly night at Citi Field. Game started at 4. It's a night game, right? It's dark out, but you can see with my hair and the fact that I'm underdressed. Actually, I needed to bring a bigger coat, and that in a sense is worth talking about, because the fact that Robert's home run, which I never ended up seeing the exit velo and the distance on it, but it wasn't exactly a wall scraper. I mean, it got over the fence comfortably. He wasn't sure if it was going to get out off the bat, but for him to hit a ball like that and cut through the wind and leave the yard is a testament to what this kid can do. And really, I think it's worth repeating, just the fact that if he stays healthy, he could potentially be a MVP contender, a superstar player for this team. And I think it's fair to say also that that acquisition that David Stearns made, trading a couple players of the White Sox, including Luis Angel Acuna, who really wasn't going to factor that much into the Mets playing time picture, and it was a pitching prospect, the other guy that came over, who went to Chicago in that trade. The Mets are paying a lot of money to have Robert this year from that deal, but that could end up being the steal of the offseason, not just for the Mets, but around baseball, right? I mean, again, I think maybe we're getting a little bit too far ahead of ourselves. It's only 2 games, but if Robert's able to sustain this level of production and stay on the field, with which the Mets are obviously trying extra hard to make that happen in terms of the ladder there, where they slow played Robert in spring training. They know he has an injury history, particularly with lower body, in his legs, those muscle types of injuries, and they're going to be monitoring how he's feeling physically throughout the season, giving him regular rest. We're going to see him get certainly at least 1 day off moving forward, because the Mets are in the midst of a stretch where they play 9 games in a row now after the off day on Friday between game 1 and tonight, game 2. So the Mets are trying their best to bring the best out of Robert. And I think that my biggest takeaway here, and I'll close with this, is that even beyond the prodigious power and the unbelievable tools that this player has, we see him patrolling in center field too. He's got some speed. We're also seeing him mature as a hitter so far in 2026. And when you look at his metrics and you watch him play, chase and expanding the zone, swinging and missing strikeouts, that's a big part of his game. It's a weakness looking back in his career. Obviously, he has the tools and the power to sometimes mask that, and it's part of the modern game. But what we're seeing so far in 2 games, it's a very small sample, but we're seeing progress in that department. There was the at bat, or the plate appearance, I should say, that Robert had on opening day against Paul Skeens in that first inning where the Mets knocked Skeens out of the game. A 10 pitch walk where he spit on a 3-2 slider that went right across the zone, just off the black on the outside corner. That is an incredibly tough pitch to take. Also, an at bat that he fouled off a lot of tough pitches with 2 strikes. And I wrote this down also, not just the walk-off home run, but this was something Mets manager Carlos Mendoza pointed out too. The at-bat that Robert had before that, this was in the 9th inning, runner on first, and he didn't end up getting the job done. And the next batter was Brett Beatty, who lined into an inning-ending double play to send the game to extras. But he fell behind into an 0-2 count and then took multiple breaking balls just below the zone that, You look back to what Robert did in Chicago. You see him swinging at those pitches and chasing in that spot, trying to maybe do too much. And the credit there goes in large part to the Mets coaching crew, the hitting department, guys like Jeff Albert, the director of Major League Hitting, someone who I spoke to in spring training about Robert, and he said at that point that he doesn't want to put a limit on a player like Robert with the type of tools that he has. So again, I'm saying it for what, the fourth or fifth time now. It's only 2 games. Let's check back in a couple of weeks and months. But if Robert's able to stay on the field and also continue to evolve as a hitter and be able to fit in with this identity that the Mets have this year with their deep lineup, the fact that they're relentless at the plate, they're working the count, they're grinding, they're fouling tough pitches off, they're taking tough pitches to get into a hitter's count or to work back into an at-bat. We've seen it a couple times now with Robert, and he's 3 for 8 so far, 5 RBI in 2 games. The stats are going to be there. There's a lot of ifs too, but he could end up being one of the most valuable players for this Mets team and be a key piece in the puzzle for them as they try to go into October and survive deep into the month of October as well.